We need to dock at Station Prime, Rivera said. We have wounded that need medical attention, though I should warn you our medical needs have become somewhat exotic. We also have a gift for the assembly, the technology to detect and prevent any future incursions from hostile dimensions. Humanity has changed, Ambassador. We're still human at our core, but we've become something more. We've become the guardians of this dimensional plane. Krelvar looked around the command center at the fearful faces of a dozen different species. The humans had returned, but they had returned as something beyond anyone's imagination. Ships. The size of moons were just the beginning. What else had they become in their long exile? Humanity's Revelation Station Prime had never hosted ships of such magnitude. The smallest human vessel was 3 times the size of the station itself, forcing the Prometheus fleet to maintain a defensive formation at a distance that still made every other ship in the system look like insects beside giants. Ambassador, Krelvar stood in the modified docking bay, accompanied by representatives from every major species in the assembly. They waited as a small shuttle departed from the flagship, a craft that looked deceptively normal until it phased through the station's shields as if they didn't exist. Captain Marcus Rivera emerged first, followed by what had once been a human, diplomatic team. They wore suits that seemed to be cut from space itself, dark materials that absorbed light in patterns that suggested depth beyond the fabric. Rivera himself looked mostly human, but his movement was too fluid, as if gravity was merely a suggestion to him. When he extended his hand to Krelvar in the old human greeting, the ambassador noticed that for a split second, the hand existed in multiple positions simultaneously before settling into one. Ambassador Krelvar, Rivera said, his voice carrying harmonics that shouldn't come from human vocal cords. Thank you for receiving us. I know our appearance is unsettling. The transformation was necessary for survival, both ours and yours. The Saurian representative, General Thax, stepped forward. His warrior culture demanded directness. Captain, your message spoke of a threat that required humanity to abandon the galaxy. Why didn't you warn us? Why didn't you ask for help? Rivera's expression showed what might have been regret, though reading human emotions had become more difficult with their transformation. General, when the entity first contacted us, we didn't believe it ourselves. It appeared to our colonies in the void sector, a being of pure thought that existed across multiple dimensions. It showed us the future, not a possibility but a certainty. The Devourers were coming, and conventional weapons, conventional thinking, couldn't stop them. He gestured, and the air in front of them shifted to display a holographic projection, though calling it holographic didn't do justice to the way it bent reality around itself. The image showed Earth as it had been 97 years ago, blue and green and beautiful. Then something appeared above it, a crack in space that leaked wrongness into the universe. The entity gave us a choice: stay and die with the rest of the galaxy when the Devourers arrived, or leave immediately, undergo transformation and have a chance to stop them. We had 6 hours to decide the fate of our entire species. The projection shifted to show massive construction yards in deep space, places where physics worked differently. Human ships being built from materials that existed in multiple dimensions, powered by energies harvested from the spaces between realities. Humans themselves undergoing changes, their DNA rewritten to survive in conditions that would have instantly killed their original forms. Every human made the choice. 8 billion souls agreed to leave everything behind. We abandoned our colonies, our worlds, our place in the galaxy because the alternative was watching everything die. Ambassador Krelvar's crystalline form hummed with anxiety. This entity, can we communicate with it? Can we verify your claims? The entity is gone, Rivera replied. It sacrificed itself to open the doorways we needed to fight the Devourers in their own realm. But we have proof. He nodded to one of his team members, who produced a container that seemed to exist in too many dimensions at once. When it opened, something floated out that made everyone in the docking bay step back. It was a fragment of a Devourer, a piece of something that shouldn't exist but clearly did. The fragment writhed and twisted, trying to exist properly in 3-dimensional space but failing. This is all that remains of their vanguard, Rivera explained. Each devourer was the size of a solar system in their dimension, capable of consuming entire star clusters. They fed on the energy of living civilizations, drawn to sentient life like moths to flame. The war we fought wasn't just physical. It was a battle across dimensions, across concepts of existence itself. We had to become something that could fight on their level. The Altarian representative, a being of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell, pulsed with curiosity. Your ships, they're not just warships, are they? They're something else entirely. Rivera smiled, a very human expression that looked strange on his transformed features. Each ship is a fortress reality, a bubble of space where we control the fundamental laws of physics. Inside our vessels, we can alter time flow, adjust gravitational constants, even modify how matter and energy interact. It was the only way to create weapons that could harm beings that existed outside normal space-time. He walked to the observation window, looking out at the massive ships holding position around the station. The biggest challenge wasn't building the ships or developing the weapons. It was keeping our humanity. When you can reshape reality with a thought, when you exist in 17 dimensions simultaneously, it's easy to forget what you're fighting for. That's why most of our population remains in stasis. We rotate crews every few years to prevent complete transformation. Those who serve too long become something else. As if to illustrate his point, another figure materialized in the docking bay. It hadn't come through any door. It had simply existed there suddenly. The being was roughly humanoid but stretched in ways that hurt to observe directly. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Captain, the fleet is ready for integration protocols. The assembly's defense grid can be upgraded within 7 rotations. Rivera nodded to the being. Thank you, Commander. Please wait for official approval. The figure dissolved rather than leaving, its presence fading like a memory. Rivera turned, back to the shocked representatives. Commander Zhao has been active for 40 years without stasis. She's one of our most effective officers, but as you can see, the cost is substantial. She exists more in hyperspace than normal space now. General Thax found his voice first. You're offering to upgrade our defenses? Why? What do you want in return? We want to come home, Rivera said simply. Not to Earth, that's gone now. Transformed into something else. But to this galaxy, to this community of species. We've spent 97 years fighting a war in dimensions you can't imagine, losing parts of ourselves with every battle. We won, but the victory feels hollow if we can't share it with anyone who understands what we saved. The projection changed, again showing the galaxy as it was now, peaceful and thriving. Then it showed what would have been. Dead systems, stars consumed from the inside out, planets reduced to dimensional waste. Without our intervention, this would have been your future within the next 50 years. The devourers were patient. They had been preparing their invasion for millions of years, waiting for the right moment when the galaxy had enough sentient life to make it worth consuming. Krelver processed this information through his crystalline matrix, accessing the combined computing power of his species. The implications were staggering. You're saying humanity sacrificed everything to save species that were your enemies just years before? We're a paradox, Rivera admitted. We wage war with terrible efficiency, but we also have an annoying tendency to protect others, even those who hate us. When the entity showed us what was coming, we couldn't just save ourselves. That's not who we are. We're the species that charges into burning buildings to save strangers, that jumps on grenades to protect our squad, that volunteers for one-way missions because someone has to do it. He pulled up another display, this one showing human colonies before the disappearance. We left behind everything. Our art, our music, our culture, our history. We compressed it all into data crystals and took what we could. But so much was lost. Did you know that we had finally perfected pizza on 7 different worlds, each one unique to its environment? Now we have nutrition paste that exists in 4 dimensions and tastes like the concept of food rather than food itself. Despite the tension, several representatives made sounds that might have been laughter. The absurdity of morning pizza in the face of such cosmic transformation was perfectly human, Rivera continued. We're not the same species that left, but we're still human where it counts. We still argue about trivial things, still fall in love, still dream of better futures. We just do it while existing partially outside normal spacetime. The ball, Setian representative, an aquatic species that communicated through bioluminescent patterns, flashed a complex sequence. The translator converted it. How many humans survived the transformation? All of them and none of them, Rivera replied. Every human who left is still alive in some form. But none of us are what we were. The children born during our exile are even more changed. They see reality as a suggestion rather than a rule. One of them, a 12-year-old girl named Lucy, recently created a pocket dimension to keep her pet cat in. The cat is fine, by the way, though it now exists in 9 dimensions and can catch mice that haven't been born yet. The absurdity broke more tension. Even General Thax's rigid posture relaxed slightly. These transformed humans were terrifying in their capabilities, but they were still recognizably human in their concerns and quirks. Krelvar made a decision that would shape the galaxy's future. Captain Rivera, I propose we convene a full assembly session. Your people need to tell their story to everyone. The fear needs to be replaced with understanding. Rivera nodded gratefully. We have one more thing to share. The entity didn't just give us the means to fight. It gave us knowledge about the universe, about dimensions beyond our own. There are wonders out there that make the devourers look primitive. Gardens of pure thought where consciousness can take root and grow. Realms where time flows backward, and effect precedes cause. We've become explorers of impossibility, and we want to share those discoveries. Over the next hours, more human representatives arrived at the station. Each one was changed in unique ways. Some had eyes that saw in spectrums that didn't exist in normal space. Others moved through walls as if they weren't there. A few communicated without speaking, their thoughts transmitted directly through dimensional fluctuations. But all of them retained something essentially human: curiosity, humor, and an irrepressible desire to connect with others. The chief engineer of the Prometheus fleet, a woman named Dr. Yuki Tanaka, explained their propulsion systems to a gathering of scientists. We don't move through space anymore. We convince space that we're already where we want to be. It's like, imagine if you could edit the universe's GPS to show you've always been at your destination. The universe believes it, so it becomes true. A young soldier, barely out of what would have been his teens, demonstrated their defensive capabilities by allowing a plasma bolt to pass through him harmlessly. We're not entirely here, he explained. Parts of us exist in dimensions where your weapons don't. It's like being a ghost, except we can choose when to be solid. The medical officer, Dr. James Park, showed the most disturbing transformation. Half of his body existed normally while the other half phased in and out of visibility. I was caught in a dimensional rift during the 3rd year of the war. Instead of dying, I adapted. Now I can reach into other dimensions to heal wounds that haven't happened yet or cure diseases by removing them from the timeline entirely. As the day progressed, the full scope of humanity's transformation became clear. They hadn't just evolved. They had become something that transcended traditional concepts of life and death, space and time. Yet through it all, they maintained their humanity through shared memories, cultural artifacts, and in stubborn refusal to let go of who they had been. Admiral Chen was awakened from stasis for the formal assembly meeting. She appeared older but not aged, as if time had touched her differently than it should have. When she spoke to the assembled representatives of hundreds of species, her voice carried the weight of nearly a century of impossible war. We didn't choose to become this, she said, standing at the podium in a uniform that shifted between dimensions. We didn't want to leave you all behind, but faced with the choice between letting the galaxy burn or sacrificing our normalcy to save it, we chose sacrifice. That's what humans do. We adapt, we overcome, and we protect, even when the cost is everything we are. She paused, looking at each species representative in turn. We're asking for your acceptance, not your approval. We know we're frightening. Now, we know our very existence breaks your understanding of reality. But we're still the same species that shared our music with you, that traded bad jokes across language barriers, that fought beside you and against you with equal passion. We're still human, we're just human plus something else now. The vote was closer than anyone expected. Some species couldn't accept what humanity had become, seeing them as too dangerous, too other. But the majority recognized the sacrifice made on their behalf. The formal resolution passed. Humanity was welcomed back to the Galactic Assembly, with their new capabilities recognized as a defense asset for all member species. As the session concluded, Captain Rivera stood with Ambassador Krelvar on the observation deck, watching the massive human ships begin to disperse to take up defensive positions throughout the galaxy. "What happens now?" Krelvar asked. "Now we try to remember how to be part of something again," Rivera replied. "We've been soldiers in an impossible war for so long we've forgotten how to be neighbors. But we'll learn. Humans are good at adapting. Even when we've adapted so much we're barely recognizable." A young human girl, one of those born during the exile, phased through the wall beside them. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, but her eyes held stars that didn't exist in normal space. "Captain Rivera, Mom says I can't keep the pet dimension I made. She says it's irresponsible to create pocket realities without permission." Rivera sighed, a perfectly human sound, despite everything. "Listen to your mother, Sarah. And please use the doors. You're scaring people when you phase through walls." The girl pouted, another perfectly human expression before walking back through the wall anyway. Krelvar made a sound that might have been laughter. "I see some things never change." "That's what saved us," Rivera said. "Not the technology, not the dimensional transformation. It was the stubborn insistence on staying human even when humanity itself became negotiable. We're different now, Ambassador, but we're still the species that will argue about pizza toppings while reshaping reality itself." The Prometheus fleet took up positions throughout the galaxy, each massive ship a guardian against threats from beyond dimensional walls. Humanity had returned, transformed into something impossible but still recognizably themselves. They brought with them weapons that could burn concepts and shields that could deflect thoughts but also bad jokes, improvised solutions, and an irrepressible spirit that had survived even dimensional transformation. The galaxy had been saved by humanity's sacrifice, and now it would learn to live with humanity's evolution. The ships that dwarfed planets were just the beginning. What humanity would become next, nobody knew. But one thing was certain. They would face it the same way they always had, with determination, adaptation, and an annoying refusal to give up being human, no matter how inhuman they became. In the end, that was humanity's greatest weapon. Not the dimension-breaking ships or reality-editing technology, but the simple, stubborn insistence that no matter how much they changed, they would always be the species that charged into the impossible and somehow